Thank you very much. Right, so good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream. Welcome to this meeting of the South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee on 25. My name's Councillor Anna Bradnam, and I'm the chair of this committee. So, members, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and I'll start with my vice chair, Councillor Peter Fane.
Morning, members. Peter Fane, one of the members for Shelford and vice chair.
Thank you. Councillor Redrop.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Councillor Lisa Redrop, and I'm one of the members for the Harston and Comberton ward.
Thank you. Councillor Garvey. Microphone, Councillor Garvey. Your microphone. Thank you.
I'm Corinne Garvey. I'm the councillor for Girton, Drayton and Madingley.
Thank you. Councillor Sandford.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Councillor Peter Sandford, one of the members for Caxton and Papworth ward.
Thank you. Councillor Khan.
Good morning, Councillor Ariel Khan. I'm a member for Harston and Comberton ward.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Khan.
Hello, good morning. I'm Martin Khan. I'm one of the members for Histon and Impington ward.
Thank you. Councillor Batchelor.
Morning, Councillor Henry Batchelor, one of the members for the Linton ward.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Williams.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Richard Williams, member for the Whittlesford ward.
Thank you. And Councillor Heather Williams.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everybody. Councillor Heather Williams, and I represent the Mordens ward.
Thank you very much. And also assisting me today, I have officers with me. If we can start with Rebecca Smith.
Morning, I'm Rebecca Smith. I'm the delivery manager in planning.
And since I'm looking left, I'll ask the officer to introduce himself.
Good morning, I'm Adam, Planning Officer for Cambridgeshire Planning.
Thank you very much. And our legal advisor, Councillor.
Good morning, everyone. Vanessa Blaine, legal advisor for the committee.
Thank you. And delighted to welcome Sarah Steed, who is a new officer to South Cambs, but known to us, who is Democratic Services Officer. Thank you. And Pippa Turvey, who is Democratic Services and who is our producer today. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. So those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you're deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. May I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they're addressing the committee. Can I also remind everyone that there will be a fire alarm test at 10:30 this morning. Please don't leap up unless it goes on, and I'll indicate if that's the case. Also, I will say that when that alarm ceases, the lights continue to flash in this room. That is normal. If a member arrives after the start of any particular application or leaves the chamber once an application has commenced, they will not be able to take any further part in that application, either by entering into debate, questions or clarification, questions of clarification or the vote. So, item 2 on the agenda is apologies. So, Sarah, are there any apologies for absence today, please?
So, Chair, we've had apologies from Councillor Hawkins and Councillor Henry Batchelor attending as substitute, and we've also had apologies from Councillor Handley and Councillor Garvey attending as substitute.
Thank you very much. Okay, so item 3 is declarations of interest. Do members have any interest to declare in relation to any items of business on this agenda? No, I can't see any. But if, as the meeting progresses and you realise there may be an interest, please do raise it at that point. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the minutes of the April meeting, starting on page 5 of our agenda. I have a number of I think they're just typographical errors to raise. On page, yes?
Yeah, I'd like to raise a correction for page 5, please. It's just in regard to my declaration of interest
Yes.
for the Impington College item. It was just that I said I was involved in a local football club that used that type of pitch, but we're not really very local to Impington College, so it was just very much for completeness. So
This is down at 4. Okay.
right at the bottom of page 5.
So you're not involved in the local football club, but
No,
you're
not
involved in
a football club that uses that type of pitch.
Oh, not pitches at Impington Village College, but
No.
that type of pitch.
Yeah.
So if we change that wording to Councillor Redrop indicated she was involved in a local football club that uses the type of pitch at.
Under discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Sanford.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Chair. I believe there's either an error or omission in paragraph 10. It says Councillor Peter Fane left the meeting prior to the consideration of this item.
Sorry, hang on. Where are we in paragraph 10?
Paragraph 10, page 11.
Yes, okay. Go ahead.
I actually left the meeting before the consideration of this item. I'm not sure whether Councillor Fane also left the meeting, so...
So Councillor Sanford left at the same time. You need to have that
exactly
identified.
so. You need to have my name in there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have just some small typos. I'll come back to you, Councillor Khan. Page 6, item 6, the last paragraph on the page refers to the number of stories in the building, and that should be STOREYS, not the other kind of story. And then on page 7, at paragraph, on item 7, paragraph 1, 2, 3, in the second to last line, there was a case for, and I think that should be varying from the indicative standards in this instance. There seems to be a collection of words that don't make sense there. So are you happy that we refer to that as, it was the officer's view that although the indicative parking standards for the site were for 268 car parking spaces, there was a case for varying from the indicative standards in this instance. Are you happy with that wording? Okay, great, thank you. Right, Councillor Khan.
In the Impington Village College minutes, you said about the comments about the report.
So
in the Impington Village College, sorry, page, it's on page 8. The committee heard from Councillor Yvonne Murray of Impington Parish Council, and from Councillors M. Khan and J. Vixen as local district members, but there's no detail of what was said. I would like some more detail of what I said, because the arguments I put and the arguments I put against the about the problems with the application for completeness of the record. I think it's important in this particular case. I made several planning arguments against about the problems with the application, and I want them recorded. If you want, I can
give... Without any alternative wording, we can't approve that today, so we would have to bring these minutes back to a further meeting. Can I just check before we go on? Just check with you, Councillor Khan. My understanding is that the paragraph below covers the comments that both you and Councillor Rixon made. In other words, it's a summary of what you said.
I was reporting as a councillor, sorry, as a local councillor, not as a member of the committee in the debate, because I was not, I couldn't obviously participate. In fact, I was doing it from a distance. Right. Yeah. So I feel it ought to be mentioned. I can provide some wording, perhaps it could be approved by a chair.
If you'd like to propose some wording, Councillor Khan, a summary of what you said. And we can also look back at the recording and make a note. And if I can suggest that that wording comes back to Chair and Vice Chair for approval, and then we can look at these minutes at the next council planning meeting. Okay? So we'll bring these back. Thank you. But with those other amendments made, please. Thank you. And Councillor Batchelor?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick bit of pedantry. Under item 3, apologies, my name is missing a T. B-A-T-C-H. So.
Item 3.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Batchelor. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Have you got that? Yes. Okay. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. As we seem to be going into detail, I have no idea if this is important or not, but when people leave the meeting, it's emboldened, except for myself. So I don't know if that's emboldened for a reason, in which case there's an inconsistency there.
But whereabouts were you referred to?
Page
but not
8, when I had to make a dramatic exit.
Oh, yes.
Because of my daughter's foot.
Okay, so embolden. That's fine. Thank you.
And can I just, so we're deferring the minutes to the next meeting?
We are. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll include these amendments that we've raised today, and they will come back with those amendments for us to consider any comments. I'll agree with the Chair and Vice Chair any amendments to the wording before we bring them back to the next committee for approval. Okay? Lovely. Thank you very much. Right. So we'll defer those to the next meeting. So we now come on to agenda item 5, but before we do, I'll just remind us of the process that we use. So the case officer will give a brief introduction to the report. The committee may then ask questions of clarification of the case officer. Then registered public speakers will be invited to speak for 3 minutes each, and members may ask them questions of clarification. The committee will then debate the item, and public speakers are not permitted to take part in that debate. At the end of the debate and conclusion of any questions, providing there is no alternative proposal, the officer recommendation will be read out, and I will request a proposer and seconder for the recommendation. I will ask members to vote on the recommendation, and if a recommendation, be it for approval or refusal, falls, an alternative proposal must be made which will require a seconder and must then be voted upon, and the voting will be recorded. Right, so we'll come on to 25/00567/HFUL, which is 16 Egremont Road in Hardwick. And this application starts on page 13 of our agenda, and it's for the demolition of a garage and various items which Adam Dimidovic, our planning officer, will present. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. So today's item is at 16 Egremont Road in Hardwick, Cambridgeshire, which is proposing the demolition of a garage, a part single story side and rear extension with a rear balcony and Juliet balcony and flue. The application has been brought to committee as the applicant is a member of the council. So the location plan is here. So it's just off Egremont Road. To the rear is protected space, which is a playfield. And so here's a planning map just to demonstrate where everything is on site. So as you can see, there is to the north is 14 Egremont Road. To the south, 11. It's adjacent to the road, and it's quite prominent in its current position. Okay, so here's some photos of the frontage of the property.
So could you just go back? You skipped over your previous slide rather swiftly.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
So we can just see where that it's part of a block.
Of course. So pictures of the front. front and side. So as you can see, there's a picture of the garage to the left. And pictures of the rear. Its current state. So what is it? Here we go. Carry on.
Are you planning to talk us through these?
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
So the two-story rear side extension would have a maximum width of approximately 3.7 meters, which would project, and it would project to the rear of the dwelling house by approximately 3.8 meters. So a maximum depth of 7.4 meters in total. Sorry about this, I've been trying to manage windows on my side. As you can see on this, as we can see on this slide here, you got a proposed what was it, balcony / roof terrace, which would project over the existing, the proposed single-story rear extension, and you have a proposed Juliet balcony, which would exist on the two-story side rear extension. Materials will be to match the existing dwelling house. The extension, the two-story side rear extension, will be projecting as far as the existing garage, which will be demolished as part of this development. Thank you. A single-story rear extension positioned to the rear of the existing dwelling house, positioned between the two-story side rear extension and a neighbour, which would have a here we go. It would have a maximum depth of approximately 3.8 meters to match the existing two-story side rear extension, and having a width in total of 7.3 meters and height of approximately 2.9 meters. As you can see from the drawings, the proposed two-story side rear extension would have a height to match that of the existing dwelling house. So here's existing floor plans. And here's proposed. The roof terrace on the or balcony, as called interchangeably, on the top of the single-story rear extension would be.
Can you point that out on those plans, please?
Of course, yes. Sorry, let me just right click. Sorry about this, just having technical difficulties.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll be located up here, and it'll be defined with a parapet wall and a glass balustrade to the rear to prevent to assist in ensuring that neighbouring amenity is maintained with regards to privacy. So the parapet wall would help to obstruct views from the side, and the glass balustrade will stop anyone from walking right out to the edge here. So the whole of the roof terrace would not be in use. It would only be up to that glass balustrade. And the parapet wall here would have a total height of 1.8 meters to prevent overlooking. Planners would recommend approval on this, as we consider the design and scale to sustain the character and appearance of the area while still respecting the amenities of neighbouring properties.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam, that's helpful. Right, so does anybody have any questions of clarification? I'm going to start off with one, just at the outset. it's quite a big total proposal, quite a big increase in footprint of the area, and I think the parish council had not objected but had observed it was quite a large development. But I don't think there had been any substantial objection to that, as I understand it. Is that right?
Correct. We've had no objections to the proposal. It has been pointed out that there would be, the proposed development would be very visible in the in the context of the area, but there are present existing two-storey rear extensions already present on the same cul-de-sac as this property. So as such, we consider that two-storey side extensions, which are of substantial form such as this, would be are part of the character and context of this area.
And in an effort to reduce the overlooking to number 14, which is to the north of this property, there's a parapet wall. I just wondered, is that producing any, so that will help to reduce overlooking, but will it cause any overshadowing?
We do not consider that to be the case. According to the footprint of development, we do not consider that the parapet wall would be causing any issues regarding to overshadowing. We've using measurements of 45-degree line, 25-degree lines.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It was just something, and perhaps I misheard, on page 13 it says the reason it's a committee is an application submitted by an officer. In your introduction you said a member, so I just want to clarify.
Apologies.
Is it the papers or?
Yeah, sorry, that was bad terminology on my side. It's an officer of the council, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Lisa Redrup. Sorry, Councillor Dr. Lisa Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking on page 20 where it talks about the removal of the garage.
Sorry,
page 20.
Are you using your microphone?
Yes.
Yes, you're good.
Can you not hear me?
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't see it from here.
I'm just looking at page 20 where it talks about the removal of the garage and considers that in terms of the potential for loss of parking capacity for cars, I assume. I just wonder if there's been any consideration of cycle storage and if this proposal could still allow adequate cycle provision to meet our local plan policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the garage that's been demolished wasn't meeting our current standards for a garage as we would anticipate on any current or new developments anyway, because the current garage is is only 2.5 meters in width, while current standards under policy TI/2 requires our garages are required to be at least 3.3 meters in width. So the current garage doesn't meet the standards that we normally require of a garage in modern development, or even when assessing development from before. But we could potentially apply. If council are concerned, we could potentially apply a condition for cycle storage, but this would be a compliance condition rather than pre-commencement.
It's the sort of thing that we apply on new builds, isn't it? So I would have thought this might be reasonable to ask that consideration is given to provision of cycle parking.
We wouldn't usually condition on an extension because obviously the property is already existing, and we can't condition something that in itself would require planning permission. So if there isn't ability within the plot to provide something under permitted development, for example, then we couldn't put a condition on saying you need to provide cycle storage because that cycle storage potentially would need planning permission. But I think looking at the plot, there are places where we could require, there is space within the plot where cycle storage could be erected. Well, it could be erected without the need for planning consent, so we could put a compliance condition on saying you need to provide cycle storage within the plot, not that they need to submit the details on if we're members are concerned, or we could just put an informative on, but we couldn't require it if it was an informative.
I think that would be a good idea, and it's what we would normally ask people to do. So I think
on a new build, but not normally on an extension.
true, fair point. But if we can do it as a, did you say a compliance condition? That would be helpful. Thank you. So can I just come back to Councillor Dr. Richard Williams?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I would like to dissent on that point. I don't think we should be forcing private householders to put cycle storage in their house. I mean, with a new build, that's fine, but I don't think existing householders should be being required by this council to incur costs for a cycle storage that they may not need. If they need one, they can build one. I really think this is going too far.
Okay. And Councillor Williams?
Agreed. I think we've already had explained to us that if people have bicycles that they need to store, then there is, you can put a cycle store in your garden or what have you, whatever's accessible. We can look to make sure that you can get to the rear of the property and those sorts of things. But I do fear that it would not meet the reasonable test if we all of a sudden today decided to do something we've never done to any other extension and the like. On new builds, absolutely, because we're looking at how on those schemes how we can get modal shift and things like that. But this would be retrospectively applying it, and I would be worried that it wouldn't meet the reasonable test. Informative, a suggestion, but not an enforceable condition. Because equally, if they don't need it, then are we going to send officers to go and enforce something that people don't need?
That's fine. I was only observing that they probably currently do store cycles in the garage, that's all. But Vanessa would like to say.
I think putting a cycle store on a private application like this will set a precedent, so I would advise nothing more than an informative.
No, okay. What I was thinking of, just as an informative. Right. Are we happy that we do that as an informative?
I was only going to recommend that we do put an informative and make that noted.
Right, okay, lovely. Right, that was all questions to the officer. We could move to debate, members, if you'd like to. Councillor Henry Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest we go to the vote. I mean, to me, it seems unbelievably straightforward. I mean, there's no objections from anybody. The officer hasn't identified any harm. I can't see any harm. We've added the informative. I don't see any need for any further debate, so I'd propose we go to the vote.
I'm very happy. So if you're proposing that, would anybody like to second that? Councillor Sanford, thank you very much. Okay, so with that informative, can we take a vote then, please? Oh, sorry, the officer recommendation first, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the officer recommendations approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report, of which there's 3, plus an additional informative about cycle storage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so can we go to the vote then, please? Oh, it's all there. I think that's unanimous approval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, hang on, there's one missing. 10. There we are. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Okay, unanimous approval. Sorry, Sarah, did you want to? Can we just take the? It's 10. There's 10 of us. Can't hear you. Thank you. And as I say, the lights carry on flashing. Sarah, do you just want to confirm the vote, please?
Oh. Sorry, so there's 10 in favour.
Because it's been taken. The vote's been taken. Yeah, and we can come back. I'm planning to come back, but we just need to.
Sorry, so there's 10 in favour, so that's unanimous.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
So at the start, apologies were given for people and substitutes in place, but I'm not sure if we recalled the apology from Councillor Harvey. That's why I questioned it, because everybody had been given a substitute when we announced the people that were substituting. So we have 3 apologies, but only 2 substitutes. That at the start.
I don't think Councillor Harvey was mentioned.
No, he wasn't. That's the problem. Okay. But he has sent apologies.
Sorry, Chair, as far as I'm aware, I haven't
No, okay. So councillor Harvey hasn't sent his apologies, he's absent.
Right, well, we should acknowledge that, otherwise it affects the numbers. We just need to make sure that is recorded, that
Yes, that's fine.
Councillor Harvey
We can
is
do
not
that.
here in the meeting.
Yep. That's fine. Right, okay.
Tom is here, so we can carry straight.
Yeah, okay. Right, members, so we then, fortunately, we've just got the case officer here, so that's good. Sorry. Right, okay, so we'll move on then to item 6, which is on page 23 of our agenda papers, which is 24/03943/OUT, which is land to the rear of 159 to 163, the Causeway, Bassingbourn cum Neesworth. And it's an outline application for the construction of 9 custom and self-build dwellings, the detail of which I'll leave to the officer. So we've got Tom Gray, the Principal Planning Officer, who's going to present the report, if you are ready. Lovely, thank you very much, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yes, this is outline application for 9 custom self-built dwellings, reprovision of visitor parking, bay and relocation reprovision of a bin store serving Butterfield Drive, with all matters reserved except for the point of access. So subsequent to the publication of the officer report, there's been 3 further third-party reps. These are found on the planning website and can be summarised as follows. The representations have concerns about insufficient parking for existing residents, highway safety, specifically concerning disabled and pedestrian access and construction vehicles, lack of consultation from the developer, a lack of housing need, questioning the validity of supporting comments, the impact upon local amenities, the impact upon the character of the area, ecological impacts, flood risk, and damage to Butterfield Drive itself. So these points raised by third parties have largely been addressed in the officer report. With regards to parking, there will be no loss of parking for existing residents. With regards to the impact on wider amenities, contributions have been agreed in principle with the developer. However, health and education contributions would not be reasonable to request on a non-major application. Construction impacts will be temporary in nature. However, if members are concerned about this, this could be dealt with via condition. The other considerations raised have been satisfactorily addressed in the officer report as published. So going to the presentation itself, let me change my cursor to the laser pointer. So this is the application site outlined in red to the rear of these dwellings that front onto the causeway. The site is accessed along Butterfield Drive. It's important to note that there's been a series of infilling developments along the causeway to the rear of dwellings fronting the causeway over the years, the most recent being 20 residential units within Orchard Close to the west of the application site, which were consented under reserve matters in 2018. With regards to another site across the road, almost immediately across the road, this was for 9 self-built dwellings, which was allowed at appeal with the inspector concluding that the site is within a sustainable location. So this should be given, this is material consideration when deciding on this aspect in terms of whether the application site is also a sustainable location. So this should be considered by members. In terms of the site constraints, the proposal is outside the development framework, but adjacent to the Neesworth development framework, which is an infill village. Is approximately 600 metres to the east of the Bassingbourn development framework. It is within flood zone 1, and there are no surface water issues identified within the application site. So to the left is the illustrative layout, and to the right is the proposed site plan. These are both indicative in terms of the layout, scale, and landscaping of the site. The only matter that is part of this outline application is the point of access, which would be here onto the existing Butterfield Drive. In terms of the bin store, this would be slightly reduced in size from Butterfield Drive, but then extended sort of to the northeast in this part here. This matter is required by condition and be part of a condition recommended by officers. There'll be one loss of visitor parking bay here, but this would be relocated over here, and again, this would be conditioned as part of any planning consent members are minded to grant today. So in terms of the access arrangements, this is to the top left of the slide is the access to Butterfield Drive. It's a private road, unadopted, so it's currently managed by a management company. The dimensions of this are 5 metres wide with 0.5 metre service strips either side. As you go around the bend to the application site itself, this is the point of access. As I said before, the bin store here would be slightly reduced in length here to make way for this point of access. And there's a visitor parking bay here that would be removed and relocated within the application site. So key considerations at the principle. So as members will be aware, there's much needed self and custom built dwellings within the district. This is a sustainable location adjacent to development framework and within walking distance of Bassingbourn, which has a minor rural centre. It's a well-contained site with limited degree of public visibility due to the mature planting to the north, west and east of the application site and other buildings to the south. Neighbour amenities, so these matters can be addressed through reserved matters in terms of when deciding the scale and layout of the scheme, but looking at from the outline consent, that it is possible to provide the 9 dwellings as part of this outline permission, and further details will be provided at reserve matters. In terms of highway safety, it's an unadopted shared surface. The officers consider that there'll be low volumes of traffic will be generated. The applicant has submitted a trip generation and transport note to demonstrate this, and cars will be travelling at low speeds. So, in terms of the planning balance, it would provide self and custom built dwellings, which would help meet substantial identified shortfall in the district. It's in a sustainable location. It would generate some economic benefits. In terms of the points against, it is obviously outside the framework, so it's contrary to the spatial strategy for the district. The officer recommendation is to approve subject to conditions and completion of section 106. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. So, do any members have any questions for the case officer? Councillor Batchelor?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick one. I'm running through the statutory consultees comments, and I see the housing officers lodged an objection. Can I just confirm what exactly their issue is?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the housing officer has raised the principle of development in terms of they would rather have a rural exception site on the site, but the proposal has to be assessed on its own merits. It is for self and custom build dwellings, and so while their comments are acknowledged, we have to assess it on what is before us and not what could possibly go there.
I think the point was, forgive me, but the request was for affordable housing, whereas this application doesn't include that. Councillor Heather-Williams and then Councillor Redrup.
Thank you. Just something I should possibly, I don't know, declare an interest in that the local member has raised the local doctor's surgery, Bassingbourn surgery, which is my doctor's, so I don't know, just in case. My main thing is around page 27. It says about on paragraph 6.3, Cambridgeshire Integrated Care System, no comment outside of NHS Cambridgeshire area, which I find puzzling as I'm at Bassingbourn surgery and I'm in the Cambridgeshire area and I get referred to Adam Brooks and what have you. So just wondering what some clarification around that, because I think people in Bassingbourn would consider themselves in Cambridgeshire.
Yeah, thank you. I understand that Integrated Health Board has a different geographical area to the district or the county lines, so they will have a different area than. So I received a consultation response from Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care System saying that they weren't covering this area, and then they forwarded it on to the Hertfordshire Integrated Care System that didn't respond to any consultation. So it's a different geographical area that they work to, I understand.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, if I may add, because I observed that too, I think the impression I got was that whilst the surgery is in what we would think of as South Cambridgeshire, the actual parent hub for that surgery is in Hertfordshire, and so it was their administrative centre was in Hertfordshire, not here.
So, thank you for the clarification, Tom. Yes, Ashwell is in Hertfordshire, and that is the parent and actually part of the ICNIL group. But you do get referred to you get referred to Adam Brooks, not necessarily Lister. Sometimes you do. It's one of the only benefits of being on the board is you get to go wherever they think you've got the best chance of getting the appointment sooner normally. But my point is, we need to, as an authority, need to know where these are, because it shouldn't be that they are forwarding it on to Hertfordshire. I think we need to consult with the appropriate authority in its first instance. So is that something that can be taken away and looked at by officers? Because rather than going through a third party, we need to make sure we're consulting with the right people. Thank you.
But also, the officer did say he contacted Hertfordshire, but he got no response. So he did attempt to contact the parent lead authority.
Just to hear from the officer, please.
Thank you. So the the officer for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Integrated Care System forwarded it on to the Hertfordshire body. Notwithstanding that, we wouldn't expect, it wouldn't be reasonable to request contributions for health contribution on a scheme of this size. So we wouldn't, going forward, we wouldn't be necessarily consulting them because it wouldn't be the threshold of a major application. So it wouldn't be reasonable to ask for contributions from the developer for health care on a non-major scheme.
I understand that, but at the end of it, we did consult. As I said, Chair, we were reliant on a third party forwarding it on, which I don't criticise you for, but we need to flesh that out for the future to make sure that we're consulting with the appropriate authorities.
Thank you. Rebecca, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I was just going to say we can contact the NHS and ask them for if we can get a geolocation for their boundaries, and then we can load them on our GIS so that we do consult the right people.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Redrop.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick question. The Parish Council, one of their objections was lack of disabled persons access. I wasn't kind of sure what that meant. I just wondered if officers had any concerns about accessibility on this plot, or if you had any idea what that meant. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I take it to mean in terms of the existing access arrangements to the application site. I think that's been. I take it that to mean that in terms of the accessibility to the application site, in terms of highway safety, pedestrian access, disabled access. Officers consider, because it's an existing street and that's a shared surface already, and the additional 9 dwellings wouldn't generate that much more traffic, that the existing arrangements and therefore the proposed arrangements are satisfactory.
All right. Councillor Peter Sandford.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just confirm this development will trigger Section 106 funding? My rather vague understanding was that 9 dwellings is just below the threshold for Section 106.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sanford. So this is covered in paragraph 9.89 of the report, page 40 of your reports. So because, although it is 9 dwellings and therefore not a major scheme, it hits the 1,000 square metres or more threshold in terms of total floor areas of the 9 dwellings. These are quite large houses, so it's highly likely that there'll be in totality more than 1,000 metres squared for the 9 dwellings. So therefore, the contributions have been requested and agreed in principle.
Thank you.
Observation.
It just may be helpful for members to know that. Oh no, actually no, it's fine.
Vanessa would not like to make a comment. Okay. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if the officer could just go back to, I think, the first slide he showed with the red line boundary of the site. Yeah. The access road isn't included in that red line boundary. So actually, if we just look at this application, we're on the one side, but it is on the other. So could I just clarify, is the access road included in the red line boundary or not? Because if it wasn't, it'd be slightly problematic.
It's not, but I'm sure the case officer will clarify.
I can clarify. Yes, the site location plan on the left-hand side is that submitted with the application, showing that the red line is included within the application, so extending along Butterfield Drive, so it does include the access. the image on the right was just just showing for members, just highlighting where the actual dwellings would be.
Right, and Councillor Martin Khan.
Coming back to the access road, I didn't know this was going to raise it. The access road is not in the ownership of the applicant, and it's a private road. Obviously, the development will depend upon agreement with the owners of the management company that manages the road. I just wanted to confirm that the fact that you do need to have an agreement, and it's not already in place, is not a material consideration. Should not be a material consideration in the application, or maybe it should be, but I'd like some clarification on that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Khan. Yeah, it's a civil matter that's outside of the planning assessment. At planning stage, they've done the correct, they've served the correct notices on the owners of Butterfield Drive. So in terms of planning, that's all we need to know. So I'm sure that discussions will take place if planning consent is granted today between the owners of the land.
So for clarity then, should that red line down Butterfield Drive be in blue? In other words, it is land in the ownership of the applicant, or can we just clarify, should it be red or blue or not there at all?
I can clarify. So a red line boundary is the boundary of the site. So it's a boundary of the application site. So the red line on this includes the road. If it was outlined in blue, that would be an ownership boundary. So a red line boundary is the site, and then any other land in the same ownership is in blue. This isn't in the ownership of the applicant at present, so the red line is the line round the site.
Right, but the matter is a civil matter. Yeah, okay. Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions, if I may, one very quick. In introducing this, the officer referred to 3 additional submissions, I think objections. Part of that was the lack of consultation by the developer. Just to clarify, are these from people who were notified of the application, would therefore be expected to respond to the council, or was there some failure in notification in this case?
Thank you, Councillor Fane. So there's been no failure in terms of the council's notification of this application. These neighbours were notified and a site notice was put up, as well as letters sent out. I think the point that the third parties are making is in respect of the direct engagement from the developer as part of a pre-app discussion.
Thank you. And can I also ask, we will of course be looking at the site, or considering the impact of the site opposite, 9 self-build dwellings allowed at appeal, and that's referred to at 9.12 and again at 9.26. But then at 9.28 we're also aware that there have been decisions at appeal which have gone the other way, as we might put it. I note that the density of this proposal is considerably higher than that of the density of the one on the other side of the causeway. I wonder if the officer could give us some guidance as to the weight which we should properly place on various appeals. I think Rebecca's going to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Fane. So the weight you give to any appeal decision when considering this application is very much a matter for you as members. It's within your gift. There have been appeal decisions for and against custom and self-build applications. However, the appeal decision at 9.26 on page 32 does give an indication as to the weight given by the inspector when they were considering the application on the opposite side of the road, outlined in orange, with particular regard to character harm and whether the site is in a sustainable location. And the officer's already advised that this is a material consideration. That said, I don't want members to feel fettered, that they have to go a certain way, or they, for or against. You're considering this application on what you feel are the material planning considerations and merits of this application. And I never want a member to feel fettered or worried about appeal costs, or we must absolutely give way. It is a matter entirely for you, the way you give those decisions when considering this application.
Thank you, Vanessa. Right, I think that deals with all the matters of clarification. So, shall we move into debate, members? Oh, sorry, thank you, yes. Oh, speakers, yes. Right. First of all, we have Janet Grimwood online, who's from the Butterfield Management Company Limited. And perhaps would the case officer take down the presentation so we can see Janet Grimwood? So Janet, you have 3 minutes, and can you just, before you start that, can you just explain what the Butterfield Management Company Limited is?
Yes, it was the company that was set up to manage, and we thought to own the driveway, which is Butterfield Drive.
Okay.
The 12 houses, sorry, the 9 houses of Butterfield Drive have sustained that road and are legally required to sustain that road at their cost.
Yes,
and there is
okay.
no, thank you, and there's no
that's
arrangements.
fine, just to explain it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much. So you have 3 minutes then, and do make your case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors and officers. Butterfield Drive, as its name suggests, is a driveway. It's not a road, and it's not an access road to any other development. We'd like you to consider and remember the joy of being able to get on your bike, go out and cross the road safely, and call for a friend, to ride your scooter, to shoot a basketball, or even have a game of French cricket. This is the joy and the pleasure of living at Butterfield Drive, one that is going to be materially and detrimentally affected by this proposed development. And we would suggest that extending a driveway for 9 more houses is a material planning consideration that hasn't been given due consideration. The design of the driveway, with 7 of the 9 houses coming off that T-junction, at that T-end, we've got somebody with a mobility scooter as her only means of transport. We have another sprightly but disabled person there, and that visitor's car parking space is actually designated as a disabled car parking space for visitors to the Metropolitan Housing Association houses. And that was a condition of the planning and a requirement of the original development. It's been a great issue that we haven't been consulted by the developer. This is a material change for the housing that is already a very successful and pleasant environment, which will be dramatically changed by having construction traffic, which has been dismissed as, oh, well, this could be dealt with by condition. But this is 9 separate developments, construction traffic going down what is really a private driveway, probably for over a year, possibly 2 years, and it will spoil the character of Butterfield Drive. And you may be thinking, oh, it's only 9 more houses. But what if in a few years' time, Butterfield Drive is used again for another 9 more houses to come off this estate or whatever? It has not been designed as an access road to the back of the road. It was designed for the 9 houses of Butterfield Drive. It's a very successful development, and they would like to keep it the way that it is. There are other opportunities to have this development with a different access road off the causeway. There is land that is owned by the developer, we believe, that would allow for it. So to use Butterfield Drive is an economic decision by the developer. It's not necessarily the only form of access to them.
Janet, your time is up, and I'll give you just a moment if you want to finish.
I was just going to say, we do believe that changing the character of the driveway is material consideration, which hasn't been given full consideration, and we just ask that you do so before making this decision.
Righto,
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for winding up as you did. Does anybody have any questions for Janet Grimwood? Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask a question about something that was mentioned at the start of the comments, where the speaker said that they thought that the Butterfield Drive Management Company would own the land. Am I to assume from that that it actually doesn't?
No, and
sorry, carry on.
Yeah, we're responsible for land that we don't own. I'm a management agent, so the normal arrangement is that a housing estate is built, and then the road is passed over to the management company, and then it would be managed. The original developer has actually retained ownership, and we understand, and according to the land registry records, has sold an option to this new developer to buy that road without any consultation or notification to the 9 owners at Butterfield Drive. That occurred back in 23, and we only found out when the letters were sent by the council, and we do appreciate the council have done a full consultation. It is the developer that hasn't.
I just remind members that matters of land ownership are civil matters, and they're outside the purview of the committee. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Grimwood? No. Okay. Thank you very much for presenting and answering questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. So now we move on to Tim Waller, who is the agent, and he's here in the room. Thank you. So you have 3 minutes to speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Good morning. This application proposes up to 9 custom or self-build homes within the village of Battingbong, Cumneysworth. And the committee will be aware there's already a large unmet need for this type of housing within the district, and the council have a statutory duty to provide these homes. The council's published data demand shows there's demand for nearly 1,100 of these plots and a shortfall of about 700 plots. Whilst you might consider this development to be small in that context, it's typical of the size of developments which appeal to self-builders who don't typically choose to live on large housing estates. It's also typical of the type of applications that have been granted consent in recent years, where the current supply comes from. The need for this development isn't in question, and appeal inspectors have consistently given substantial weight to the need to provide self-build homes. This matter is entirely separate to the 5-year housing land supply position. One such appeal decision was mentioned in the officer's presentation. It's a stone throw from the site just south of the causeway. The appeal was determined in the end of 2023, and the inspector commented that he concluded the access to shops, services, schools, employment and other facilities would be sufficient to mean this would not be an unsustainable location, and there would not be a conflict with the local plan or with national policy, and as such the site can't be considered to be in an unsustainable location. The site is partly within and partly outside the development framework boundary. There are various appeals for this type of housing in South Cambs. They've clearly established that it can be located outside development frameworks, including where there's a conflict with policy S7 due to the unmet need for this type of housing. This is also a suitable site for new housing. There are several cul-de-sacs north of the causeway, as the officers mentioned in the presentation. One of these, a short distance to the east, is now built out and called Apple Tree Row. It was granted planning permission by the council in 2013, and the committee report relating to that application noted how the site was well related to existing housing and enclosed by mature boundary planting. And as the officers have said today, that's the same with the application site here. And following the allowed appeal to the south of the causeway, it's not really realistic to imagine that a similar appeal on this site could be refused on the grounds of landscape impact. This is an outline application. Matters relating to the design of the new homes are to be determined later by their future occupiers. However, there can be some control imposed now, as we've suggested, to avoid harm to residents overlooking. As officers also said, it can be dealt with at reserved matters stage. The The officer's report clarifies that the Highway Authority haven't objected to the proposals, and despite various issues having been raised by local residents, there are no highway grounds for refusing the application. The comments from the neighbours have been addressed, with moving the parking space in the bin store. There should emphasise there's only a very low level of traffic expected, and the officer report explains it's only 3 to 4 vehicle movements in a peak hour in the morning or the evening. It's a very, very low level of traffic. Provision be made for all the financial contributions that have been requested by the council in the Section 106 agreement. And we've worked with officers at the pre-application stage and during the course of the application, and as a result we have their support, and I agree with their views and respectfully request the application be approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Waller. Can I just ask you one thing? You referred early on in your presentation to a large unmet need. Were you referring to a need for self-build housing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, any other questions for Mr. Waller? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. Through yourself, Chair. You would have heard some of the concerns about the private road. Would it be, I've looked through the conditions, I can't see it in there, but it would be something you'd be agreeable to, should you be given permission, to an assessment of the road, so that then there is a comparison for after the works, so that the road can be left in the state it is currently, as opposed to then the current residents having to pick up the tab for any impact from construction traffic.
Yes, I can confirm we'd be happy with that.
Thank
That's
you,
very
Chair.
useful.
We can make
Thank you very
a
much.
road
Yeah.
condition survey.
Yeah. That would be good. So can we add in I think members, if you're happy with that. Councillor Fane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor Williams referred to the concerns expressed about the nature of the road, including, of course, by the local member. I wonder if I could ask Mr. Waller to just address one issue that was raised by Janet Grimwood, which I accept may not be, a determinant factor, but she said that she understands that the applicant has an alternative access in their ownership, which would not involve going through a private driveway.
I'm glad you asked me. No, there is no alternative access in their ownership or control.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Martin Khan.
The application is for custom or self-build. There was concern about the effect of construction traffic. The impact of having self-build, where individual owners develop their own plots, will be different from custom build, where a developer develops the whole plot at one time, but with different designs according to the design of the individuals. Do you have any, the latter would involve more intense use of the access for construction traffic, the other was smaller loads being delivered to individual plots. So I can see there's a difference. I'm not quite sure which is worse, but there is a difference. Do you have any idea about which you would be likely to go towards?
So the developer thinks that it'll probably be predominantly custom build rather than self-build, although there is the option for both. It could be that there's an element of sort of a couple of people may come along and take a couple of the plots, but the rest would be custom build. So it would happen in a shorter time period, and obviously it can be controlled through a condition with construction management if necessary as well.
Thank you. I think Rebecca would like to come back in.
Just to explain that the application is for self or custom build, so it could be either, and the details of the layout and what the build type is will be dealt with under reserve matters applications. So at present, the application is for self or custom build. It could be one or both or either.
Thank you. I'd also like to just draw our attention to the fact that there is need in this application for re-provision of the parking space somewhere, and also addressing the bin store. And I just observe that that bin store is, I don't know, 6-7 foot fencing, which is quite a visual obstruction. I just wondered, and it will depend on how the road on the other side of that access point is developed, but what consideration are you giving to how that might be repositioned or revised?
Well, it has been shown on the plans. I think the bin store that was built is actually different to what was approved originally when Butterfield Drive got planning permission. I think it's been either built differently or amended by the residents. But it can be designed in whichever manner was considered best at the reserved matters stage.
Okay.
So Mr. Gray has said that the plans are indicative. We've shown how we can accommodate a bin store of the size required for the council's bins and how we can accommodate the parking space.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Garvey.
It's just about the access road. I'm sorry, and I've just forgotten what I was going to say.
That's fine. Okay.
It's about the 9 houses being responsible for the road. If it were approved, would the additional 9 houses also be part of the management company?
That's a good point. Okay, thank you. So, do you want to respond?
Yes, I'm told they would make a fair contribution. They'd obviously be responsible for the road within the application site, the new build part. But they would also make a fair contribution towards the upkeep of the road and the rest of the site.
Okay. I'd just like to ask Rebecca whether we need to make any reference to that. If this were, sorry, Councillor Garvey asked, obviously the residents in any new buildings would be responsible for management of the road in that section, but they also need to make a contribution to the ongoing maintenance of the section at Butterfield Drive. And so, does that fall as a civil matter, or is there something we can't make any reference to that in this application?
No, all we're looking at this on this application is the principle of development in terms of the 9 self or custom build in this location and the point of access.
Yeah.
So it's not even the layout, the access road, etc. It's literally just the point of access. So anything in terms of...
Or the ongoing maintenance of the road, which is what Councillor Garvey was
that would all be dealt with as a civil matter.
Okay, right. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually probably more of a question of clarification for officers maybe than the applicant, but just looking at the highways comments, the local highways authority, and I'm a little bit concerned that we're clear about what highways have and haven't said. My reading of the highways comments is they don't actually address the issue of the safety within Butterfield Drive because it's not an adopted local highway.
Yeah.
So all local highways have commented on is the access from Butterfield Drive onto the causeway, and have said nothing about the safety within Butterfield Drive. It would be useful if that was clarified. So the lack of objection from highways should not be taken as, you know, having any relation whatsoever to the situation within that development.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll address that. So yes, that's correct. So the local highways authority have just assessed the impact upon the causeway from the access from existing Butterfield Drive onto the causeway and the potential intensification of that. They have not assessed the internal, the impact on highway safety along Butterfield Drive, because as you say, it's an unadopted private road.
However, having drawn our attention to that, at 9.61, it does say the local highways authority would not adopt that road and have recommended a condition requiring details of management and maintenance arrangements to be attached on any planning consent granted. So would that come at reserved matters stage?
It's a condition
Or is it
on the outline consent requiring future maintenance and management of the street.
Is that one that we've already covered in our conditions here?
Condition 16.
Okay, lovely. Good, so that covers the point that Councillor Garvey was making as well. Okay, any other questions of clarification for the officer? No, right, okay, so let's move into debate. Does anybody want to say anything else? Sorry. Do you want to come? Sorry, is there something you're concerned about, Councillor Williams?
Yes, but I was trying to get into the officer clarification before debate, and you sort of whisked off before I could get there. Just to say that when going through the reports, I think it's important that we note the departure status, and because we had a response to Councillor Fane's question, at which point the advertising of its class as departure application wasn't included. So could we just have that clarified for the record, please?
So yeah, the application was advertised in the press as a departure.
Thank you.
Right, okay, so anybody want to make any comments about this? We had a site visit. Oh, Councillor Sandford, are you still on questions of clarification, or are you? Right, okay, do go ahead. Kick us off with debate.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding the officer's assessment, I do have a concern about the safety of this proposed access. It is a fairly long, straight, smooth drive. You get up to a reasonable speed. I know I did when I got there for the site visit. And then you have a blind 90-degree right turn. It's blind because of the fence of the existing houses. And it's possible car could come at an unsafe speed, discover there's bins being left in the roadway, were still children playing. I think the safety aspects could be managed by speed bumps, signage, whatever, but when I looked through the report, I couldn't see any of that mentioned. Perhaps Mr. Gray could comment on whether we could include that as a condition.
Yes, certainly when we walked from the causeway towards the end of Butterfield Drive, the fence on the right goes right to the end of that garden, doesn't it? So it blocks the view around the corner.
Exactly,
and
yes.
Likewise, the bin stores block the view out around, if there was to be any left-hand corner, which is the point I was making earlier
Also
on.
true, yeah.
Would the case officer like to comment on that at all? Whether we could make any request for consideration of, because there's an assumption that speeds will be low because this is paved and it's a relatively narrow road, but is there any way that we can?
So there's potential to amend the condition for the proposed street. I think it would be unreasonable to change anything in the existing Butterfield Drive.
So you don't think?
I don't think it would be reasonable to change anything in the existing drive. The thing about shared surfaces is the block paving that reduces speeds. It also gives a psychological marker that your drivers are now entering a shared user space. The 90-degree bends are a natural, they naturally slow down vehicles. So we could request details on reserve matters in terms of landscaping for the proposed extension of the drive, but I think it'd be unreasonable to do anything on the existing street.
Yes, Rebecca.
I'm just going to add to that the situation that you've described in terms of the speed down the existing drive exists, and the 90-degree bend exists, and so that's a situation that exists in terms of where you're saying something could be in the road, for example. That situation already exists. So at present, we're only looking up to the means of the point of access in terms of the road layout. Beyond that, we won't have those details until reserve matters stage. So I think, as Tom said, it would be unreasonable to request any changes to the existing situation, as it is an existing situation. However, beyond that, we could look at amending once we know the detail of the road layout, for example.
Again, that would be at reserve matters stage, wouldn't it? Okay. So
Let's come back on that. If
yeah.
the existing road is within the red line of this application, why can we not make requests to have additional safety features?
Yeah, I'll come back because I think it would. That situation exists, That's why it's not that we couldn't do it within the red line, it's just that that situation exists at present. So in terms of the vehicles going up and down that road at that pace, that situation already exists, and we don't know what will happen beyond that point of access. I think we're making the assumption that the indicative layout, it will be the layout of the proposal, but we actually don't know that. At the minute, we've just got an existing situation up to the fence, and that fence will be open. We don't know what's going to happen beyond that. And so in terms of any impact, it would be assessed at a later stage.
I think the difference will be the intention of the drivers. The intention of the drivers currently is to go up to as far as basically a T-junction at the end, whereas in future, some of the drivers will be intending to go beyond that. But we can't judge that at this stage, and I think it's probably best dealt with at reserve matter stage. We can still look at highways issues and safety, can't we, at reserve matter stage?
Yes, in terms of the site layout.
Yeah.
Because the road layout would be part of that.
Yeah, okay. Right, Councillor Henry Batchelor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I don't actually have any issues with the access or the driveway. I don't see that as something we should be sort of really concerning ourselves with at this stage. I think we've heard from the officers around that. I mean, I do have concerns, albeit no one's actually raised it yet. So it's actually around the principle of building outside of the village framework. I think there has to be a very high bar for us to actually accept development outside of, set village frameworks. And I think I made a similar point at last month's committee meeting for a very similar application. I mean, clearly we need to, make a dent in our need for custom and self-build housing. We have quite a long list of requirement in South Cambridgeshire. So I see that obviously that has been, been given very significant weight in the officer's balance. I mean, for me, I would put slightly more weight on the fact we are, breaking the village boundary to should we approve this. So, for me, it's it's a more finely balanced decision than I appreciate the officers given weight to. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a difficult one for me, but on different grounds than's been raised already. So, yeah, as I say, my main concern would be the, the perforation of the village framework should this be approved. So, yeah, I'll have to make a decision, but I'm probably leaning towards approval at this stage, but, I'll wait to hear from others.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Batchelor. Councillor Martin Khan.
Just first of all, a comment about the right-hand turn. If it's being used as a through route to the new development, the visibility, I don't think will be a problem there, because you're coming along the left-hand side of the road and turning right. So you will still have good visibility towards the right. If you were turning left to get access, then that would be, I think, a significant concern because you have no verges. But I think it is. I think that shouldn't be a problem for all the other reasons said as well. Now, one concern that I do have, and I don't know whether this is a matter that we can take into account, and perhaps the officers can advise, is the fact that having developed this development, you're effectively taking the boundary back to the ditch at the back of the plot, and there's a field to the left, which is now between two promontories of development behind the roads along the causeway, house along the causeway. So that would make that a prime target for a similar application in the future, and whether we need to consider the impact upon the scale of the development. I mean, judging from the previous applications, possibly that's not a concern, but I just wondered whether it's something we should be taking into account.
I think it comes under the realm of what Councillor Batchelor raised, which is outside the village development framework. Did you want to comment on that? We can't think about things in the future that haven't happened yet, but would the case officer like to respond on that? Or Rebecca?
Yeah, I've just asked Tom to put the slide up which shows the aerial overview of the existing site and other developments in the vicinity. Obviously, every application is assessed on its own merit, so we have to look at the existing site, and unfortunately we can't necessarily take into consideration what may happen next door. In planning, unfortunately, this would not set a precedent as such, or fortunately rather than unfortunately, it wouldn't set a precedent. So if the adjacent field came forward, we would look at that proposal as and when it was put in front of us. If I can just respond in terms of, or just make a comment in terms of the development framework. Sorry, I know you didn't ask a question, but I'll take the opportunity. The field that's outlined opposite in orange, that's the site that was allowed at appeal. And just to advise that if members do have concerns about development outside the development framework, that we'd need to look at a reason why that's a concern. And in terms of the site opposite, Inspector agreed that that was a sustainable location. So it would need to be potentially for other reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you, Chair. I see this in terms of two issues. The first is the overall sustainability of the site. And I think Rebecca has just explained that very clearly. The only thing I would add is that paragraph 928, the inspector in another case did recognise that self-built housing should be given significant weight, but pointed out that the delivery of it is to be balanced against the requirements of the development plan. In this case, the fact that it is outside the development framework is, I would say, marginal. It's adjoining a development framework. I think we have to accept that this is a sustainable site. The next question is that of access. And I have great sympathy with the concerns raised by Janet Grimwood on behalf of the Butterfield Management Company. I accept that if this goes ahead, it will change the nature of that private driveway. It's perhaps unfortunate that the ownership of that private driveway was not transferred to the management company as was intended, but it's not a matter for us. And indeed, even if it had been, it would be a private matter, not a matter for planning control. I have great sympathy with the fact that they may well be faced with access to further sites in the future. We can't, however, assume that, nor can we take it into account. And I think, therefore, that there are certain matters we may need to come back to on safety at the reserved matter stage, but that we cannot really consider at this stage. And so, with that in mind, I am coming to the clear view that we should accept the officer's approval and officer's recommendation and approve this development.
Thank you. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a slightly different view. Paragraph 115B of the NPPF says that in assessing sites that may be allocated for development, it should be ensured that the site is safe and suitable, that safe and suitable access to the site can be achieved for all users. So that is a significant material concern in this application, that the NPPF says we can look at safe and suitable access. The Highways Authority has not assessed the safety of Butterfield Drive at all. They have only assessed the safety of the access onto the causeway. Paragraph 9.6, one of our report notes that the local Highways Authority would not seek to adopt the shared surface, and says it would be less than 6 metres wide. I'm not satisfied that there is safe and suitable access to this site, given what we know about Butterfield Drive, and it's not adopted and it doesn't reach highway standard, and we are significantly changing the nature of it from a cul-de-sac to an access road. So for me, I'm not satisfied that there's safe and suitable access onto the site. I obviously give weight to the fact that there was a application approved on appeal opposite, but I note that that site has a direct access onto the causeway, onto the public highway, and I would distinguish this application from that application on the basis, as I say, that that application had direct access onto the public highway. This one doesn't, and I'm not satisfied that there's safe and suitable access.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to come back, Rebecca?
Yeah, apologies. I just wanted to clarify that The Highways Authority assessed the access of Butterfield Drive Junction onto the causeway. So that is the access on this red line as such. So the access, the safety of the access onto the site, because the site is the whole red line. So they did assess the access junction onto the causeway. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, so if I could just come, but they didn't assess the road of Butterfield. They've assessed the junction, but not the road.
Yeah, they assessed the access onto the driveway.
And on that general subject, I'm concerned about what it says at paragraph 9.65, because whenever you see a swept path analysis, it suggests that the space is tight. And it says it would be possible for two cars to pass side by side, and refuse and emergency vehicles would be able to enter and exit the site in forward gear. Although, as is currently the case, so that's presumably Butterfield Close, due to the width of the road, it's envisaged that cars and larger vehicles, such as refuse vehicles, would not be able to pass at the same time. So, and it says this factor acts to slow down vehicles and encourage a low-speed environment. Well, it slows everything down because you can't get past. And I'm just thinking about delivery vehicles as well, which are maybe more or less about the same size as or maybe a little bit smaller than a refuse vehicle. But I'm just wondering if we're going to be setting up a situation where, there don't appear to be any passing places, or we would need to make sure that there were passing places in any subsequent road at reserved matters, because otherwise you'll end up with your refuse lorry not having anywhere to turn round. I know that there was a turning head at the top, but I'm just mindful that sometimes people park in those and that can be tricky. It is very narrow. Right, okay, so I think everybody who'd registered to speak in the debate. Councillor Garvey, did you want to speak? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll come back to you. Corinne Garvey.
I'm a bit concerned there's no pavement to access even the furthest away houses.
Okay. Right. Did you want to comment on that?
Sorry, I'll move my microphone. So at the minute, we're only considering the principle of building on that piece of red line land. So in terms of the site layout, which would be any landscaping, how many houses, plot layout, road layout, etc., that's all dealt with at reserve matters stage. So at present, it's making use of the existing situation in terms of the existing driveway, the point of access being the field, the fence where Tom showed there was a fence at the minute, and then anything beyond that is to be dealt with at reserve matters stage.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. So I agree, I have concerns about the access onto the sort of what will be the new road as it comes round. I also think the inevitable will happen when people are there, people park on the road, and then you're going to have a situation if say the bin lorries can't get past and there's a parked car, yeah, it's going to create complete and utter carnage down there, to be quite frank. I also note what Councillor Dr. Richard Williams said about the appeal opposite, that it is direct access onto the causeway, and I think I agree actually that this is different in its access point from there. That being said, we do have a need, as is identified, for self and custom build. However, this application is for both self and custom build, so we have to work on the basis that they could all be one or the other. There are, even if I was to be satisfied on access, there are significant constraints to this site that make me feel that I'm not happy with the self-build concept. If it was custom build and there was more control, sort of more master planning on the site, given its constraints, that possibly would alleviate some of those other concerns. But I don't think it is suitable for a self-build proposal where it is currently. We do have an obligation to make sure that enough planning consents are given in relation to self and custom build, but we also have an obligation to make sure that the existing residents are able to live in a safe environment. And I think there has been sufficient information provided, as the Chair has mentioned as well, in the sweat path analysis to give me enough information that I am concerned that that couldn't be met currently. With that in mind, I am personally minded towards refusal. However, in the event that the majority vote is for approval, Chair, I would like us to take forward that condition in relation to having a road condition survey ahead of time, because as many of us on committee know, when we see sort of phase 2 plans or what have you come forward, if you haven't got that at the start, it's very difficult to then evidence what road deterioration is due to the development and what is wear and tear. So I think we've heard from the developers that they would be happy to agree to that, and that remedial works need to just, not to give them a new road, but to make sure that the standard of road is the same at the end of the construction as to the start. I think that's reasonable.
Thank you. I'd just like to take a few moments just to consult with. Rebecca would like to come back.
I was just going to clarify in terms of the existing situation on the existing driveway. I know there's been some concerns raised about refuse, get my teeth in, refuse vehicles and other cars passing on that driveway. That is an existing situation that could happen, is happening in terms of the existing properties on the existing, I'll say existing a few times, on the existing road. So we're looking obviously at intensification of the number of vehicles going up and down that road, but in terms of I think passing places, for example, have been raised. That's actually an existing situation on the existing road. That was all I was going to clarify.
Sorry, just coming back on that, the point I was making was that 9.65, a swept path analysis had been submitted, and I assumed that was that for the existing road?
On the existing, because we don't know any details about the new road.
Thank you. Sorry, please, just let me have a look around the room. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. So, to be clear, my concern is where the new part of the road would continue from, because however the route takes of the new road, or extension of the road, it's still got that access point on that angle, and I think that is the area about whether the road then, as is on here, or whether it goes into the other side of the site, that's still a very tight with clear visual obstructions, and that's my point. You imagine a large vehicle comes around that corner, however the road then continues, that's your pinch point, and that's where we could have problems. And also, if we did have a situation, then bins can be taken to the top of the drive. It's not that long. If you're all the way down the bottom, are we going to say that residents then have to drag all their bins all the way up to the causeway point? That's quite common, that if you have a private road, like I have on my section, there's a few houses down it, you have to put your bins at the top. It would not be practical or feasible to have people from right down the bottom to do that. So I think that's where we're sort of looking at as well.
Currently, my impression is that, as we saw on the site visit, there are commercial bins. In other words, vehicles go down as far as the northern end of Butterfield Drive at present. I appreciate what you're saying.
My concern is when they come round that corner to go on, which is new and additional of the site.
But they wouldn't be taking them all the way down to the causeway, because there's provision there.
But we're also saying there's an existing problem which you raised on the swept path analysis. It was your point that you raised, Chair.
No, the swept path analysis says it would be possible for 2 cars to pass, and that cars and larger vehicles would not be able to pass at the same time, but they obviously make provision for each other. Right, okay, so we have some concerns. Councillor Martin Khan or Councillor Ariel Khan? Councillor Ariel Khan. And you, okay.
Would it be possible to include an informative about ensuring that there's double yellow lines, or I'm not sure how this is usually sorted out, but to ensure that cars don't take up too much space on the road to allow for the waste vehicles to pass?
The highways, it's a private road, so that wouldn't be enforceable, I don't think. Do you want to come back on that?
So there's a condition recommended for the future maintenance and management of the road. I mean, the existing arrangements is, as you can, those who were on site, and I think one of my images showed, there isn't any parking allowed or turning for the public on the road existing. It's up to the applicant to propose a future management of the extension of that street, and whether that no parking would be extended to that. I mean, the proposed plots are large and we have off-street parking. It's all down to reserve matters, but I would expect that they would be coming in with, at least two vehicles, if not, garages for additional vehicles within those plots. So I wouldn't, looking at the indicative plans, I wouldn't expect the reserve matters to necessitate more parking along the road. There's no parking on the road at the moment. It's all on plots.
Yeah, okay. And Councillor Martin Khan.
The assessment of the road, the private road aspect of it and the new road is basically dealt with by the planners because it's a private road. The details of the road on the new plot are not there because it's a detailed matter. Maybe it's going to be 6 meters wide, we don't know. We don't know what provision of parking there's going to be. It's only an indicative plan that you've been given. The assessment of the increased traffic suggests there isn't a problem. It's only about peak hours. I consider that the problems linked to the site are to do with the access, or the anticipated problems to do with the access. I don't see that we have sufficient grounds to reject on these matters. It seems to me that although I wholly understand the management of the lady concerns, those concerns seem to me not sufficiently aggravated by the amount of development that's proposed upon the new development. If there were a lot more traffic, yes, that would be a problem. And it might be a problem if it was extended beyond the further site, but we can't take that into account. That has to be dealt with at the time, and maybe they'll find a different access to that. So if it were go to development. So we have to assess just on what's proposed here, and I don't think there is sufficient access, particularly as the one area where the increased traffic might be a problem is this turning where there's a bend and visibility, but because it's on the left-hand side of the road, I don't see that there would be a real problem in visibility. You would have adequate visibility on that point. So, it seems to me that any problems are deferred to the assessment of the road that is done in detail in the reserve matters when the development comes forward. And we should be concerned that adequate highway is provided with adequate space for cars to park, but that will be done at a later stage. So the principle seems to me that it is possible to do a development, would be possible to do a development that's satisfactory with the information that we have, and because of all the other concerns and the shortfall, my general feeling is that I should be supporting I'm inclined to support the development.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Sorry, did you put your hand up? Yeah, thank you.
It was just, I'm conscious that we've heard people sort of minded to approve as well. Just going back to my point, I'm just wondering if officers need some time to phrase the condition around a road conditions survey, or whether they've got something that can be displayed.
Yeah. No, we've got some wording that we can use for that. Do you want to give us a verbal description?
I haven't got definitive wording, however, I have got an indication that it's a condition relating to a road condition survey, including restoration to that standard once the works have been completed.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, thank you. We don't need to vote on that, we take it as part of, do we? I don't think we need to. No, we just take it as part of, that's a condition that, are we all happy with that sort of condition to go in? Yes, I'm agree, and I'm quite happy that the wording be clarified in due course. Right, so my observation is that whilst this is perhaps not a development that is ideal, I think it's acceptable, and I think it's a reasonable use of the land, and although there are concerns that we have, I think those concerns can be adequately addressed at reserve matters, and so I think I will be approving this. So I just wanted to clarify that I do understand the issues about residential amenity and the concerns of the residents, and we've heard those, we've looked at the use of the road. Much of this will be resolved when we get the reserve matters application that actually determines how will that bin store be relocated, how will the visitor parking be relocated. But actually, as we've been advised, all of those proposed 9 plots would have plenty of space. It's been demonstrated by the visuals that it's possible to get 9 plots on the site with sufficient on-plot parking. So I think with those matters taken into account, and in particular the point that we're concerned about, at 9.66 we're advised that whilst third-party comments have raised the lack of visibility caused by the relocated bin store, given its proposed location and the low-speed environment, it's not considered that visibility of cars reversing from parking bays would be unduly compromised. And I take from that that visibility of cars going around that corner or going across that access point would not be unduly compromised either. So I'd like to propose approval for this. Would anybody second that? Sorry, Rebecca, do you want to summarise?
Yeah, just to summarise, Chair, Officer recommendation is for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report, along with the additional condition relating to a road condition survey prior to the commencement of works, and then restoration to that standard once all development has been completed, along with satisfactory completion of a Section 106 agreement with the heads of terms that are also set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, as aforesaid, I would like to propose approval for that. Would anybody like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Fain. So let's go to the vote. Okay. Sarah, would you like to give us the result? It's just gone, it's still on the screen. Yeah.
7 in favour, Chair, 3 against and no abstentions.
So that's carried. Thank you very much, members. So that is approved with those conditions. 50. We've been going for nearly 2 hours. Would people like a 5-minute break before we look at the appeals, or would you like to crack on with these?
Can we just crack on over 2 minutes?
Yep, okay. Righto. So if we can have a break until...
No break.
Oh, it'll take 2 minutes. Sorry, no, okay. No, exactly, that's what I was thinking. Okay, so let's carry on with Agenda 7. So this is the general and enforcement items. Over to you, Rebecca.
It's just appeal decisions, not enforcement this month. But just to, as you can see in Appendix 1, there's the list of the decisions that we've had from the Inspectorate. For once, the list of decisions exceeds the list of appeals received, so that's good. PINs are getting through their backlog. There were none that were committee decisions. However, there were 2 where the appeal was allowed, and our recommendation for refusal was overturned. If members have got any questions on any specific appeals, then please let me know. The land to the south of Sheer Fen Boat Club that was previously in the local inquiry date scheduled has now moved to waiting for an appeal decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, any questions directly to Rebecca for that? And Councillor Khan. Councillor Heather-Williams?
Thank you. It was just on the 2, was there anything sort of in common on those appeals? Is there something in particular that, do you know what I mean, a trait or something that we can learn from those 2 being approved?
I'll come back to you.
Later? Or
Later.
No, okay. Right, and Councillor Martin Khan?
I was going to ask the same thing, really. So, in particular, the one on in Caldicot, why this was, on what grounds was it allowed?
There's one in Network House, St Neots Road, Caldicot, and the other one was at 85 Histon Road, Cottenham. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I'll put together a summary and I'll circulate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that then, I'll call the meeting to a close. The date of the next meeting is on the 11th of June. Please, oh, and there's training on the 3rd of June, so please put both dates in your diaries. And I'll close the meeting at 11:52. Thank you very much.